right now on Retiring Today.
One of the biggest topics on retirees' minds is senior living communities. No two are the same. Which is right for you?
We bring in expert Becky Montgomery of Senior HomeFinder of Iowa to talk about all of the living options right now on Retiring Today. Welcome to Retiring Today. Senior living communities. It's on the minds of most retirees and many pre-retirees as they make that transition from the working years to retirement. I'm here with Loren Merkle. He's a certified financial planner. Every day he sits down with families and helps them plan their retirement future. So Loren, when I think about being a certified financial planner, I think about the financial side of things, but why is the senior living and the senior living community a part of the work you do at Merkle Retirement Planning? It's
a big part of the work that we do because it is on the minds of most pre-retirees and retirees, because most pre-retirees and retirees have had a personal experience with a loved one, with a friend, with a coworker who has been through adverse health conditions that have required an extra amount of expense on a monthly basis, and they've seen how that really upends the remainder of their retirement. So it's something that we have to consider within the overall course of the plan, and why we focus on it so much, not only because it's on their minds, but also it's a part of what we do. As retirement planners, all we do is we work with people who are within 10 years of retiring or already retired. And the long-term care piece of it, the healthcare piece of it, and how you manage that expense or the potential expense down the road, and how that could impact not only your retirement, but also your surviving spouse's retirement, or even the legacy ambitions that you have in leaving whatever is left over to your loved ones, to your charities, and especially where we are at here in rural Iowa. Because there's a lot of legacy farmland that people want to leave on as maybe already third generation, and they just want to keep it going and keep it going. And sometimes if you add an extra $10,000 a month expense into the budget, that can really eat up resources like that legacy farmland that you want to leave to the next generation. Yeah, and I think that people think of this as being very expensive, so it does make sense that it needs to be part of an overall financial plan. So as maybe some pre-retirees who might be watching, or those who haven't moved into the senior living communities yet, as they're starting to plan, what do you need to think about before the need even arises? Before the need arises, what we have to identify is when and if this need does arise, how would it upset your retirement? How would you combat that expense? There's multiple ways that you can do so. What most people are familiar with is what is called long-term care insurance. Now, 10, 15 years ago, purchasing long-term care insurance is substantially different than what you can get in the long-term care insurance market today. So today, many retirees, ironically enough, are not choosing to cover their long-term risk exposure with long-term care insurance because it doesn't cover as much as what it used to. So it's more of a supplemental approach where the insurance company is paying for a piece of it and then you are on the hook for the rest of it. Also, you don't know if you're going to actually need long-term care. So one of the disadvantages is people pay these monthly, yearly premiums for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and they never need to use it. So it's just expense out the window. So there's a lot of different things to consider when we're talking about building this type of risk into your plan. The important part is it has to be built into the plan, even if you choose to self-insure the entire risk. So when you're 75, 80 years old, you have this extra expense that comes into it. You make sure that it's not going to upend your retirement, and you also make sure it's not going to upend any of the other plans you have for a surviving spouse or legacy assets that you have. And so you guys put together plans every day for pre-retirees and retirees, and long-term care is just one of the 5 kind of tiers or 5 parts of the plan. When the need arises, do you find that the families are giving you a call right away to say, okay, how do we pay for this? Or what does that look like when the need does arise? We hope so. That's certainly what we encourage, and we talk about this risk many times throughout our conversations. So if that need arises where a family member, a loved one has to have long-term care or some type of senior living community, and there's an extra expense involved, we're at the top of their mind because we've already talked about it many, many times. So they call us, they say this event took place, now we need to sit down and figure out how within the plan we're going to actually implement the plan that we put in place hopefully years ago. So
how much does all this cost?
What we see with our personal experience with the families that we work with, we have families paying anywhere between $3,500 a month all the way up in excess of $10,000 a month. So it can be a real game changer when it comes to your longevity in retirement, which again is why it's so important to consider prior to that expense needed to be expended.
And how many years do people generally, is there an average that you see in the industry that they need to be paying these kind of expenses?
Well, there's national studies that are done on this. I don't have any regional studies here within the state of Iowa, but nationally they say an average of 3 years is what we need for long-term care. Now, personally within our experience with our families, so far what we've experienced is somewhere around 24 months, maybe 36 months on the long side. But you never know. You never know. And if you need to be in a facility for 5 years, even 7 years, the consequences can be pretty dire, and we need to plan for as much of that exposure as we possibly can.
Yeah, and you talk about facilities, and that's going to lead us into the expert that we're bringing in, but man, I bet your families have a little trouble knowing what it's going to cost because you don't know what kind of a facility you'll need, and there's so many different types.
There's so many different types, and that's part of the reason we brought Becky in here, and she's going to be in the next segment to talk about the different types of care facilities, how to transition from one type to another type, and really all the things that you need to know as we consider covering this type of risk and what your experience or what your family members' experience might be. Because I can tell you, Molly, when family members give us that call, it's an emotional time. It's an emotional time. Their loved one, their health has dwindled. It's in a place where there's a lot of things going on in their life. The financial aspect is a heavy burden. But if we've put the planning in place, now that burden has lessened. And now you can focus on the most important aspect, which is taking care of your loved one and making sure that your loved one has the best place possible to get the care that they need and that they deserve.
Okay, speaking of all the places you can choose from, in the next segment we bring in Becky Montgomery of Senior HomeFinder of Iowa. She'll talk about all the different kinds of places there are for senior living communities and much more coming up on Retiring Today.
You have worked for a long time. There are so many decisions to make about your retirement. How much income do you need? How not to run out of money? Now is your chance, and you get one shot to get it right. Attend Merkle Retirement Planning's Passport to Retirement. We will discuss how to create tax-free income, how to avoid the next market meltdown, and how to wring every dime out of Social Security. Your time is now. Classes fill quickly. Call or text today. Zero cost to attend.
You made it. Years of hard work, investing, planning, and now you're here. The long-awaited reward you spent a lifetime looking forward to. But what now? After years of growing a nest egg, now you may want to manage it. Use it to fund your dreams. Make it last as long as you need it. And leave some for those you love. So what do? Wall Street continues to be uncertain, and some conservative options have dropped through the floor. How do you maintain opportunities for growth and reduce risk of loss from market changes? That's where we come in. We are Merkle Retirement Planning, your personal retirement planners. From investments to tax reduction strategies, with our Merkle Retirement Method, we can help you reach your retirement goals. You worked a lifetime to get here. Let us help you enjoy it to the fullest. For a complimentary visit, simply contact us today. Merkle Retirement Planning.
We're joined now by an expert in senior living communities. It's Becky Montgomery of Senior HomeFinder of Iowa. Becky, so glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Loren Merkle, of course, certified financial planner, helps people kind of work on the financial side of making these big senior living decisions. But Becky, before we talk about some of the decisions and the different choices that people have, I think it's important to find out why you got into this type of work.
Well, my mother lived with Alzheimer's for 15 years, and we learned at her diagnosis that it is not a disease that you get better in, you get worse. And we, as a family, came together to figure out a plan for how to deal with her progression of the disease. There were 4 daughters, and my dad, we were raised as a team. He was Johnny Orr, and he helped us figure it all out, that we worked together. My sister was in charge as the executor, and she got diagnosed with ALS and died. We regrouped. We had to figure that out and went from there. I helped Dad tour different communities. He would come out after lunch and say, I don't want to live with a bunch of old people. And we understood that, and I understand that with people. So I worked in a community for a short time and realized I could better serve people if I wasn't limited to an individual community.
And she did say Johnny Orr, Cyclone fans, of course, a famous person for you and for everyone in the state of Iowa, the famous basketball coach, of course, for the Iowa State Cyclones. Now, Becky, let's go back to the work you're doing now. It's important work. Kind of explain to people exactly what you do.
I meet with people and help them determine where they're best served in a senior living community based on their financial needs, their medical needs, and where their family is. There are a plethora of options. You couldn't possibly manage it all yourself, and I become your advocate, and I help you determine your best options. I go on tours with you to those communities, help remember the questions you might have forgotten of things that were important to you when we met. So I become your advocate and help you through the process of determining where you most likely will be comfortable.
So for the audience, for the people watching us here today, maybe they have a family member, maybe a spouse who their health is diminishing, and they're starting to think about maybe they need some help with finding the appropriate type of care for their loved one. What's the best place to start? How do they get started?
Well, they can contact me, and I will help them figure that out based on those things, their medical needs and what they're looking for. Each community offers a different collection of services, so it's difficult for them to know where to look or what they're looking for. So
as you're trying to identify and really place them in the position or the place that's the best for them, what are some of the key things that you look at? What are some of the key metrics, or what is it that you're looking to identify to say, this is the best place for you?
Well, I actually don't place them.
Okay.
When we determine what their needs are, they have to sign a medical release form for me to work with them, so that when I contact communities to schedule a tour, I have the authority with HIPAA regulations to discuss what their issues are, and can you handle this, and can you take care of that? And once I get that approval from them, then I set up 3 or 4 tours for them and let them choose. It is up to them, but it's based on their medical needs, and understanding when to make that decision is based on how you are going to survive. In our personal situation, while I told you Dad didn't want to move into a community because he didn't want to live with old people, it was 2 years later that we had to change the story for him and say, Dad, if something happens to you, Mom can't tell anyone. And that's when you have to figure out where that critical point is to make the decision to decide to start looking.
Yeah, and before we got started today, you kind of just listed off to us the different options. I didn't even know those. So tell us again just the different types of senior living communities.
Well, you have a variety of communities offering a variety of services. The services include independent living, assisted living memory care, residential care facility, CCDI. Those are all weird terms, but it's continuous care, dementia illnesses, residential care facility. Everything is abbreviated, AL, ALMC, MC, and that's just industry standard.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the problems that our families and really the public has been trying to identify what is going to be the best for them, because you do have all these acronyms and these initials, and what does it all mean, and trying to sort through that mess. We find that within our side of the industry, right? Take Social Security, PIA, what's that mean? FRA, what's that mean? And that's part of it. I would say, as I'm sitting here listening to you, one of the things I'm thinking is from an independent living is pretty self-explanatory, right?
Yeah.
You're living on your own. And then we get into assisted living. What would be some of the key defining characteristics of what assisted living is, and then the next phase?
The biggest difference between independent and assisted has to do with food.
Okay.
In independent, you might get 1 meal a day. In assisted living, you get at least 2 and often 3 meals a day in assisted living. So you're no longer cooking or preparing food. In addition to assisted living, there are levels of care that you might require regarding your activities of daily living. In independent, you can hire that in. Like if you stay in your home, you can bring help into your home. It's when that all changes that you don't want to do that anymore. So independent living is on your own. Assisted is assistance with food and activities of daily living. And then memory care is assisted living memory care. They do everything for you.
Okay. From our families, the cost that they're paying for these types of care, for this type of care, for our families, it ranges somewhere between $3,000 upwards to $10,000 a month. Is that what you're seeing?
Absolutely. In fact, $3,000 is on the independent side, and with usually one person.
Okay.
If you add a person on independent, it adds to it. And assisted living, yes.
And then what about the dementia or the memory care
The
units?
CCDI units and the ones that have different regulations, they are typically a daily rate, and it ranges from $195 to $325 a day.
Okay.
So that hits a little higher.
Okay. Well, I think one of the hardest parts is to get started. If somebody was in need of this type of service, they're thinking about calling you, what would the process that you would take them through, what would that look like?
I typically ask to meet with them in a location that's convenient for them. I don't bring them to my office because I office out of my home.
Okay.
So I meet them wherever is convenient for them. I have them sign the 2 forms I need. One is a disclosure of services, one is the release of information. I start with what is your financial situation, because that is the driver. If you are not capable of paying for this, I refer you to people to help you get qualified for Medicaid. I will still help you find a place to go, but it changes the whole scope of the conversation. So what is your financial situation, what are your medical needs, and where is your family?
So the financial situation is key.
It's the driver.
And this goes back to what we were talking about, Molly, in the very first segment, is this kind of risk needs to be planned for before you run into this type of an event, where now if you haven't planned for it and you don't have the financial means or there's not money set aside for it, then your options are much more limited, and now
Yes.
you're restricted to the Medicaid option.
Yes.
And that's not the option. It's a good option if that's what you have, but if there's better ways to plan for it, where you have a lot more variety, that you can structure this to more of your loved ones' liking, then that is definitely the better route to go.
It's an advantage, certainly.
And how quickly does the process happen? Because I would imagine it might be better to meet with you before the need arises, but I'm sure sometimes people don't meet with you until the need arises. I've heard of waiting lists for some of these facilities. Take us through the timeline.
Okay. In actually deciding on a community and choosing one, if there is a waiting list, some people sign up for communities well in advance of needing it and remain on a waiting list so that when they get there, maybe they get in. Some communities change up the waiting list process. However, you'll have an option of 3 or 4 communities, 5 or 6, whatever you've toured with me, to choose from. And if you are ready to go now and there's room now, it's a 2 to 3 day process for you to be approved to go in. You have to have an assessment before you can move in, a medical assessment. So they can't take you unless you do. And then actually transitioning to the community can be a little longer because it's a big change. You're going from a home or even an apartment to a smaller room. It's a big transition. It takes a while.
One of the things that we get a lot of questions from our clients, and seems to be a phenomenon that's really developing within this industry, are these homes or these big complexes that you can move into when you have everything is intact and health is fine, but they'll slowly transition you dependent upon which phase of care you need. Do you work with facilities like that, or what can you tell us about those?
Those are, there's quite a few of those actually, and very good ones. And when you're ready and you want to do that, because you want to downsize, you're tired of maintaining the yard and the house and stuff, and you look into that, the options change a bit on those. They often require a buy-in.
Right.
And that's a different story, but if you go that route, you typically get a little cheaper rate as you move through the system. Mm-hmm. So they have a full continuum of care is independent, assisted living memory care, long-term care, rehab, and you never have to leave.
Yeah.
So those are available. There are not as many of them.
But there are more of them that are being developed. I think there's
Yes.
just within the region here, there's a few of them that are in construction right now. And the idea behind this is kind of your last stop, right? Even though you're healthy, all the facilities are intact, it will be your last stop, and you'll just transition as you go. Typically there is a buy-in, so there's a lump sum buy-in for it. There's a monthly cost to it, of course. But I think some of them are also structured where when you're gone, then you still have some of that equity or some of that initial buy-in value can go to your estate. Is that right? Or
True, that is true. They're not all like that, but
Yeah.
that is an option. Some are, some aren't, and it's a complete variable. There are also several of them at that point will never kick you out if you run out of money. So there's a give and take on it.
just to make it easier.
Yeah, just to make it easier to decide.
They're all different.
They are all different.
There are some differences amongst them, and it's not a one-size-fits-all like any of these things that we talk about. So we need to identify what is going to be the best fit for you, and then make that decision based on that and the resources you have available.
Yes, and when do we make that the best fit?
Right.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
So Becky, I imagine some of our viewers right now are watching saying, I really need to talk to her. I'd really like to talk to her. I want your contact information for the viewers, please, but I also want to know your geographical reach.
Okay, I currently will work with you no matter where. I'm a new enough business that if I don't have a contract in an area where you are, I'll research the area and help you figure it out and work to get contracts in those areas, because I don't charge you anything for my service. I get paid by the community with whom I'm contracted. That's why I don't direct you to one over another, because that wouldn't work very well in my business either.
Right.
So to reach me, I'm available on my website, seniorhomefinderof Iowa.com. You can call me at 515-770-8831. It's easy either way. I answer the phone all the time, and I reply to emails all the time. I am very available to just help. I will talk through it with you. I will figure out a time that works best for you, and I'm just accommodating.
Good. So basically, you're an independent confidant that helps them weed through this maze of options and complexity, and you're an advocate for them to help them find the best place possible for the care that they need.
Absolutely. I am their advocate.
Very good.
Okay, Becky Montgomery of Senior HomeFinder of Iowa. We thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for
Becky.
having
It's a
me.
pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
And can I say go Cyclones?
Yes, you can.
You have worked for a long time. There are so many decisions to make about your retirement. How much income do you need? How not to run out of money? Now is your chance, and you get one shot to get it right. Attend Merkle Retirement Planning's Passport to Retirement. We will discuss how to create tax-free income, how to avoid the next market meltdown, and how to wring every dime out of Social Security. Your time is now. Classes fill quickly. Call or text today. Zero cost to attend.
It's your retirement. How will you live it? How will you be remembered?
Will you be able to take me on vacation? Will you be there for my ball games? Will you teach me your values? You'll be able to play with me. Oh, help me go to college. How will I remember you?
Have the retirement you dream about. Contact us today.
I'm here with Loren Merkle, certified financial planner. In today's show, we've been talking about senior living communities. Loren, what are the takeaways from this episode?
The first takeaway, which Becky really hit on, is you need to prepare for this type of care, this type of risk before it happens. The best way that you can address it when it happens is if you already have a plan in place, you already have a good idea of what kind of impact it's going to have on you and your surviving spouse or loved ones when it does happen. So we need to be prepared prior to that type of an event. Also need to evaluate your retirement income plan and long-term care together. This is very thematic for what we usually talk about from the standpoint is we can't just take long-term care and say, here's how we're going to tackle it. We can't just take Social Security and say, here's how we're gonna tackle it. It's all very integrated. If we need a long-term care, if we have long-term care, Social Security could be one of those that we pay for it. Your investable assets could be a way that we pay for it. Any insurance programs you put into place could be a way we pay for it. So it all works together. And ultimately, you need to have a retirement plan in place to help you through the tough times. And I cannot stress that part enough. When you have an event like this that is so emotionally driven that you're thinking about your loved one, you're thinking about your spouse in need of this type of care, the last thing you want to cause anxiety and stress is how are you going to pay for it? How is it going to impact your life for the rest of your life and your family's life for the rest of their lives? So have a plan in place that addresses it, make sure it's well taken care of, so when this time does come, you can focus on what's necessary instead of the financial aspect.
And senior living communities is just one piece of that retirement plan. We know there are 5 big components, so there's a good opportunity for people to talk about all of the components of retiring in its Passport to Retiring classes. Tell people about them.
The Passport to Retirement class is a 2.5-hour long class. We hold them around the metro at different universities, and we talk about the 5 components of your retirement plan. One of those is the long-term care need, the health care need, the income, the investment planning, the estate planning, all the legacy planning, all of those components, and we dive into detail on what you should be thinking about and what may be incorporated within your plan on those components. And I think this is one of the biggest takeaways as it relates to your plan and the Passport class. One of the hardest parts for most Americans is just to get started. 74% of Americans say they are not prepared for retirement. You do not want to be one of those 74% that are not prepared. So get started. One of the easiest, best ways you can get started is to sign up for the class. We don't charge you anything, it doesn't cost you anything, so there's no risk, you have nothing to lose, and you have your whole retirement to gain.
Okay, if you want to learn more about those Passport to Retirement classes, there's a number on your screen right now. You can text that number and a member of the Merkle Retirement Planning team will reach out to you and get you signed up for a class. Also, if you need more content, you're looking for more, this has been interesting, something you want to learn more about, go to our YouTube channel. We've got some of our other episodes there and we dive into other retirement content, or we'll continue talking about the important pieces of retirement right here on this show. It's called Retiring Today with Loren Merkle, and we thank you for watching.
You have worked for a long time. There are so many decisions to make about your retirement. How much income do you need? How not to run out of money? Now is your chance, and you get one shot to get it right. Attend Merkle Retirement Planning's Passport to Retirement. We will discuss how to create tax-free income, how to avoid the next market meltdown, and how to wring every dime out of Social Security. Your time is now. Classes fill quickly. Call or text today. Zero cost to attend.
From our family to yours, we hope you have a wonderful weekend. We hope you enjoy the show. We'll see you next week.